Good afternoon and welcome into Rollin Illini here on WPGU 107.1 and UPTV. I'm Ryan Wilson, joined by James, Boyd, Will Gerard, and Andrew from UPTV. So today we have a great show. Expect a nice segment with Leon Dash, a journalism professor, coming up here. We also have some wheelchair track talk and maybe, just maybe, some LA 2028 talk. So this morning, Will and I went outside in the nice weather.
It was nice and warm out.
I know, right?
8 o'clock this morning?
They went outside, you all exciting stuff.
A long story short today, I just went outside. Now this morning, Will and I went to track practice. And Will, I think this was your first time seeing wheelchair track up front and center.
It really was my first time seeing it in person, and one thing I noticed is that it is really intense in terms of just the muscle action with the arms and the pushing of the chair. Like, there were only 2 girls who were out on the track this morning. The rest were all out going around the city, but just seeing it up close and personal, it was definitely an interesting perspective. And I think it was cute. Adam Blakely, the coach, he was a gracious host. We had a nice chat with him.
Oh, yes. Adam is a good guy. He's their coach. And we got to watch Kelsey and Ian on the track this morning. They were racing around the Illinois track by the soccer field. And Tatiana, Amanda, Susanna, and all the other racers were on the roads racing alongside big vehicles, including big semi-trucks.
We saw them pass at one point. We were over there at Illinois track.
Yeah, and it's nice they stop at stop signs and stoplights.
Safety first.
Yeah, I can't imagine being out there alongside some big trucks.
I thought it was interesting what you said to Adam about that. He's like, well, you just have to have trust in other people.
And he's like, that's probably not good, but we just go with the flow. This morning we had a nice conversation with Adam Blakeney. He talked a lot about Ian and Kelsey and their speeds. So he would have Ian and Kelsey race around the track a few times, basically to simulate an actual competition.
Yeah, it looked like they were doing some sort of intervals where they were going hard and then kind of cruising the rest of their way around the track.
Yeah, so they would go like 200 meters at a certain speed and then slow down a little bit, and then go 200 meters again at full speed, and then do it again for a few more laps.
Lord have
Certainly
mercy.
repetitive, that's for sure.
Yeah, and you'd also try to say, don't go full speed, instead go 90% of your full speed, which I don't know how you gauge that, but he has some interesting numbers he incorporates into their training.
Well, even though I wasn't there, I'm sure their 90% is a lot better than our 100%. So I must be impressed there.
Oh, yeah. Just riding my bike over there this morning, man, it was it was difficult. And then watching them train, I was like, oh, well, I'm glad we're over here on the bleachers watching, not out there putting in work.
You know, I was not tired driving to the Illinois.
Y'all get out of here, right?
And my wrist was a little tired.
I don't know. You looked a little sleepy, if you ask me.
Okay, I was a little sleepy, but it's always a good fun being with Adam in the morning. He's always joking, and he really pushes the athletes, but he finds a way to make it fun and make them laugh, and I think that makes a huge difference for everybody.
Yeah, Adam was a great guest last year. I hope we have him on soon.
Yeah, definitely. He talked about our show, even, and introduced us to everybody. He's such a good guy. But yeah, for Ian this morning, her top speed was 16.7-ish, so she was cruising at around that speed. Kelsey Lefevre was going about the same speed.
And that was for 200 meters,
That's
correct?
200 meters, yeah. I'm not sure where Tatiana is on that gauge, but I'm sure she might be right around there, if not faster.
It looked like she was up with the front of the pack when we saw them go by the track.
Yeah, so they were all kind of in a pack, going down the roads, not busy roads, kind of by the Illinois men's golf and women's golf practice facility, by the south of the football field. And there aren't too many cars down there, but
Mostly cows and horses.
mostly cows. I have driven on that road one time, and it was after a men's golf press conference, and I was with the News Gazette and Channel 3, and after the press conference, they get in their vehicles and leave. Well, I don't have a vehicle. I'm just driving on the road. These reporters are passing me on the road, and then this horse was eating grass and made an effort to stop eating and watch me down the road. I don't think the horse had ever seen somebody in a chair drive on the road. There weren't any sidewalks.
I feel for you. There are a lot of potholes on that road.
I know, right? I never got hit. It was fun to see reporters pass me.
As Adam said, you got to have trust in other people.
Yeah, and I sure did. But yeah, it was fun this morning. Adam talked a lot about upcoming competitions. One thing to note for the team, we have the Berlin Marathon coming up in 2 Sundays. So I think they are ready for that. Of course, we'll look out for Tatiana McFadden, Amanda McRory, Susanna Scaroni. And on the men's side, of course, they have Josh George, Brian Seaman, Aaron Pike, and all of those good racers. Do you, Will, expect another win for Tatiana, or do you expect Amanda to be right up behind her?
I think I'm going to have to go with Tatiana here just because I'm under the impression that she's at full health right now, and I think that when she's at full health, there aren't many people in the world that can keep up with her.
No, I do agree. She's pretty quick, and as we talked about with her a couple weeks ago, she's good to go from the blood clots she was experiencing earlier this year. That took her out of the Tokyo Marathon, but she is back in full business, I think. And after the Berlin Marathon, it's the Chicago Marathon on October 8th. I think that'll be a nice one.
Yeah, got some home cooking going around, Not
Yeah.
as far, obviously,
Oh, yeah.
for travel, but, she does what she does, and we kind of just all stare in awe.
Right. Yeah, she holds the track record for Chicago. She has also had the most wins. She's the most decorated marathon racer in Chicago Marathon history. Not too bad, and she has won the major marathons, which is Tokyo, London, New York, Berlin, and Boston every year, except for this past year. But she won it in 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016. So she took home the Grand Slam of marathons a few straight years. And she sat right next to us.
We have photos with her.
Right,
She signed the wall.
Right, it did happen. We promise.
Yes, we did not make that segment up. Or did we? No, we didn't. That'd be hard. But yeah, I think we're going to take a break here. We're going to come right back with Leon Dash. Leon Dash is our really good friend. He teaches journalism here, as I'll mention in a few minutes. And he's won a Pulitzer Prize. Not bad. Former investigative reporter for the Washington Post. Worked under some reporters who spent a lot of time on the Watergate scandal reporting. So yeah, we're going to come right back. And we'll be joined by Dash in his office. Hi, welcome back into Rollin Illini here on WPGU 107.1 and UPTV. I'm Ryan Wilson, joined by Will Gerard, James Boyd, and we have now jumped across campus a little bit in the Great Hall, and specifically into the office of Professor Leon Dash. Leon Dash is a big wig around here, worked for the Washington Post, also won a Pulitzer Prize for his story on Rosa Lee. And here at the U of I, he teaches a few journalism classes, among many other classes, and one of those classes is immersion journalism. But thanks for joining us, Professor Dash. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
No, before we get too far in the interview, I just want to say I took immersion journalism last semester, and it was quite the experience. I went through a whole ride of interviews and different learning experiences almost every day. But I learned a lot, and I just want to thank you for all your help. I really do appreciate it. And I think the overarching theme I learned from that class was that no matter what we're going through, I think everybody is going through something, or we're fighting for something. We're all kind of the same. But back to this, Professor Dash is on the board for the National Center on Disability Journalism, and you're very aware of the reporting on people with disabilities. But when you think of that kind of reporting, what comes to mind?
The Americans with Disabilities Act was signed by George Herbert Walker Bush in July 1990. I did a lot of reporting on that several years ago for a presentation I was making at Notre Dame, in fact. And I realized that there were a lot of things going on in that period that the press never covered in the formation of that act and putting the act together, both from the standpoint of the advocates and the federal government, the Health and Human Services Department. And I was wondering why that happened. And I had an interview with a man in the Justice Department. And I said, how come he was very much involved in the beginning of the act and putting the act through before the president signed it. And I said, how come I can't find any coverage of this, of the evolution of this act or the formation of the act? And he said, because the press wasn't interested. That spoke volumes to me, because although people with disabilities make up 19% of the U.S. population, about 54 million people, most people with disabilities in American society are invisible.
That does seem to happen. So why do you think the press was not interested at that time in exploring that topic?
There was no sex, no blood in the lead. That's what reporters are looking for, something exciting to look about, to look for, to get the readership that they're looking for, the viewership on television or even on the internet. So what I'm guessing is that because the population of Americans with disabilities is a neglected population, the press neglects anything about them in general.
Very interesting.
I mean, and the Americans with Disabilities Act was a big deal.
Right.
Its enforcement provisions for employment were later gutted by industry's appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court. None of that was written about on a regular basis within the press. So even the passage of the act that sort of guaranteed, tried to encourage employment and other considerations for people with disabilities, a major aspect of the act was really weakened in terms of enforcement provisions for employment, and the press never covered it.
Now, do you think the passing of that act kind of changed the people's perspectives on people with disabilities?
Oh, I think it had a great impact on, in terms of considering people with disabilities. Before that, you had the All Children's Act. I don't know if that's the official name, that guaranteed or mandated that all children with disabilities be educated. And that was passed in 1975. So 15 years later, when you have the Americans with Disabilities Act passed, you see the general trend toward inclusion. We're a long way from full inclusion, but you see a general trend toward inclusion. But I don't think the press has caught up with that. The impact of the All Children's Act in 1975 and the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990.
So when you say the press has not caught up to that, like, what do you mean?
They're still doing the inspirational stories, the story that, of someone with a disability and how much they had achieved against great odds. And these are emotional stories that really don't focus on the broad range or the whole community of disability. It's an individual, and they're looking for what the people in the disability community now have referred to as inspiration porn, because inspiration porn is something that produces an emotional story of achievement, but really doesn't tell the world or the reader the broad world of disability in the United States.
Sure, and how do you think the inspiration porn kind of came about? I feel like that would just not start all of a sudden.
Well, it's an relatively easy story for a journalist to do, number one, because they'll see someone and they see a level of achievement, they see something very significant and altruistic, and they know they can draw on the reader's emotional strings for readership and high volume of readership for an inspirational story, right?
Now, do you think the reporting on people with disabilities has changed over the last 20 or so years?
Oh yeah, it has. It has improved a great deal overall. There's still a long way to go. There's still the phrases that, such as wheelchair bound, instead of a person with disabilities who uses a wheelchair, those kinds of things, because journalists are always looking, when they're writing, they're always looking for language of shortcuts. And wheelchair bound is one of them, for example, but it's offensive.
Mr. Dash, who in the industry do you think is currently doing a good job with their coverage of Americans with disabilities?
I can't answer that from here. I don't know. I'm involved right now in judging the 50 entries in the National Center for Disability and Journalism annual contest. And I haven't come across a consistent range or group of people or outlet that has focused on disability itself and made that a very significant beat within their organization.
Do you think it's only a matter of time until that becomes a significant beat?
I don't know. I think it may become a matter of general coverage when the press and all media recognize that the disability community is 20% of the U.S. population. Mm-hmm. You know, and that hasn't happened yet in a universal sense. Yeah.
So when you were seeing all of these different stories being submitted to the NCDJ, is there any sort of consistencies that you're seeing for this year's submissions, like any sort of ideas or reporting angles that are coming out?
No, the range is good. The range is a very good range of writing, and it's writing, audio, radio broadcast, television broadcast, as well as internet stories and newspapers. The range of subjects are from cognitive disabilities to some sort of physical disability. And that's consistent over the last 5 years in the contest. So the range is great, but you never see repeat writers. Now, I've been doing it for 5 years, and every year we select a winner who did the best story that year out of the submissions, but I never see repeat names. You know, in other words, no one is following up and doing this as a regular beat. Someone tackles it as a major story, and they do an excellent job on the coverage or the writing and the reporting. But you can see it's not yet a beat for most media outlets.
Sure.
How important is it for, I guess these reporters to kind of get out there and reflect, the wide range of disabilities, because that is, present in our society, to kind of reflect what's going on?
Well, it's very important, but they are also people who are driven by their own ambitions. And if they see their own ambitions met with another area of coverage, and they're not directed by their, what we called, they're not directed by their editors. Originating editors is the term I was searching for. If they're not directed by the originating editors to say, we're going to do this consistently, or the executive editors of these organizations to say, we're going to create a beat that covers disability in America, or disability just in our local community. Because when you think about it, when you think about 20% of the U.S. population has some sort of disability, when you think about it, then people with disabilities exist in every community. So they can do it locally or they can do it nationally. Yeah.
Just to backtrack a little bit, what criteria do you use to judge these submissions?
Writing, reporting, and writing has to be language that we consider contemporary. You know, the National Center for Disabilities in Journalism has a style book, and it's the only style book really so far created on how you write about, in terms you use when you're covering and writing about people with disabilities. And their language has to be contemporary when they write, not the old characteristics. And you still find them. They usually don't make this cut. They're usually already eliminated. But people using terms like retarded, those kinds of things, that may not necessarily be applicable to the person, but people use it very casually and very quickly, and it's not a diagnosis. So if they're using that sort of 19th century language, then they're discounted right away. And there's still writers who are still writing in that vein. The overwhelming majority are not. Right.
Aside from that style book, what can be done to educate writers about using the correct terminology?
It's a situation where they're called on, or if they do write and they do present something in any medium, radio, television, print, and they use archaic phrases and archaic references, then they're criticized, and that's how they learn, and that's how the organization that they write for, if they're not freelancers, that's how the organizations learn. So it's usually a reaction to using what was considered old language, or using shortcuts that are not appropriate in your writing.
Do you think there are real-world consequences to using outdated terminology?
Yes, because it really, I think, has an impact on misinforming people. You have to be cognizant when you write that when you write about a person's disability, that doesn't mean the person is disabled. You know, and that's not easy for a lot of people to make that transition. Just because a person has disabilities doesn't mean that you say the person is disabled or think of the person as disabled, because they're not. Yeah.
Do you think that comes from not being, like, I guess, very connected with, like, the person you're doing the story about? Because a lot of times when you write a story about somebody, you're going to ask them how they want to be referred to. And do you think that's a big, I guess, question to ask when you're reporting on someone who has a disability?
I think a good person would ask a person with a disability, how do you want me to refer to you? I don't think all reporters will ask. Okay? There are good reporters and there are poor reporters.
Sure.
There are reporters or naive reporters, beginning reporters. A cub reporter, I don't think when I started, and I started actually working as a reporter in 1966, I don't think I would have, in many circumstances, asked the person in those years when I was beginning, how do you want me to refer to you? I was anxious for getting all the details down and creating a story. I probably would have been very negligent. And so it was a matter of training, exposure, and understanding, and that comes with time. Yeah.
So what was kind of key for you in learning a new perspective on how to report for people with disabilities?
Well, I have a daughter with disabilities. She's a graduate of this university. She graduated in 2005. And she's the reason I'm here, because among the offers I had when I was leaving the Washington Post, this was the only school that had a developed program to support students with disabilities. So she was coming with me wherever I went. So it was a non-starter that I came here. But her struggles and the way people interact with her, because even now when we go out, and she's an adult woman, university graduate, and we go out and the waiter begins to ask me, well, what is she having? and I said, well, you have to ask her. I mean, he sees her reading the menu, but he wants me to speak for her because she's in a power wheelchair.
Sure.
Right.
I've tried that.
Well, okay, so it's the same. It's you have to spend time educating the public and educating journalists, and that's an ongoing phenomenon. It's not anything that's going to stop. She used to get very exercised by that, but now she takes it as to expend some energy and time educating everyone she interacts with. Right. She doesn't like it though, but she still gets very upset when people talk down to her. And people automatically begin talking down to her because she's in a wheelchair. So that has sensitized me,
Sure.
you know, in some cases hypersensitized me to that situation, you know.
So when you say talking down to her, like, what do you mean?
Like she's slow, or she's doesn't have all her cognitive faculties, and she'll let them know in a heartbeat.
Good for her.
In fact, you know, when I see someone doing that and I'm nearby, I say, "Oh, wait for the explosion." I sort of shudder for the person that she's interacting with because she'll let them know.
Sure, yeah, I've had various things happen. Now, we've talked a lot about visible disabilities, but tell me about the reporting on people with invisible disabilities.
Well, I made a reference to that, like for cognitive disabilities. When the old reference to them as retard, and high school students and junior high school students now use those terms to hurt a person's feelings and that kind of thing. So it's almost, well, it is an epithet. It's considered an epithet now, but people still use it without knowing or having the sensitivity that that's the improper term. So they come across someone, let's say, who's been diagnosed with Down syndrome, and to use a term like that is very, very hurtful, and it's not accurate, right? So I don't know, what else do you want to talk about with people with no visible disabilities?
Sure, well, I know I've heard people say that depression can be considered a visible or invisible disability, or PTSD, or bipolar disorder. So I didn't know if, like, the reporting on those types of individuals is different for those who have visible disabilities.
Well, the things that I've watched and read, and the things that have been submitted to the NCDJ, indicate that the writing about people with mental health issues, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolarism, what was the other one you used?
Oh, some people have said depression as well.
Oh, depression. There's a much greater sensitivity and knowledge among reporters than there had been in the past. So in that particular area, reporters are much more sensitive than writing about people with physical disabilities, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the area of mental health. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that is about all the time we have for this segment. We'll be right back here on Rollin Illini at WPGU 1071. And thank you so much, Professor Dash. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. You know, I think I'm going to stay right here on Rollin Illini and WPGU 1071 and UPTV. Now, that was quite an interview with Leon Dash. He is quite a good guy, and man, he has a great voice.
Yeah, it's very smooth.
Yeah, man.
Just sounds like he's done it before.
I think he has. Like I was telling James earlier, apparently he's been on the Today Show, and of course he's been on a bunch of different TV.
He's also given some TED
shows.
Talks too, hasn't he?
I'm sure he has.
He's done everything. What has
I
that man
love
not
his
done?
outlets.
When we saw his like, he sends like his resume or whatever,
Yeah.
it was like 30 pages long of accomplishments.
I got the email from Ryan, and I'm looking at it like, all right, let me just take a brief look. I was like, what? This man got just stuff on top of stuff, and I mean like legit things that he's accomplished and done throughout his career. But
Every single year of his life, there were like 7 accomplishments.
exactly, but that goes to show he was a good person to interview.
Yeah, I told James in that message, James and Will in that message, like, this guy's got an Emmy, he's got a Pulitzer Prize, but he's got a mushy inside. So what did you guys think from that interview? What did you learn?
I learned that he has a great vocabulary, but aside from that, he definitely talked to us a lot about how journalism needs to reflect what goes on in society and the people in society. I did not know that 20% of Americans are considered to have disabilities, and they make up a good portion of the population. That's not something that I knew. So after talking to him and kind of reflecting on that over the past couple of days, that was something that I really kind of latched down onto and maybe kind of opened my eyes a little bit to what's around me.
No, yeah, I really definitely want to second what James said there in terms of the media needs to cover people that aren't straight, people that aren't white, people that aren't able-bodied, because not every obviously like there are so many different people in this country, in this world, and even along those lines too, I thought it was interesting just getting insight from him about how to report on people with disabilities and how he was talking about how he doesn't really see many outlets out there that are really focusing it on it. You know, he sees it where there's a couple stories here and there where it's feel good. This person overcame this obstacle, but I think that more than anything really resonated with me. Just the idea of, you know, reporting on people with disabilities the same way you'd report on anyone else in terms of their struggles, what's going on in their life, and just where they're at. Not just, oh, this person has a disability, but they're able to do this still, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you had a lot of good points. As we had mentioned to him before the interview, an inspirational porn. So basically that means, like, for example, you see somebody like me in a chair and you think, man, he's probably not going to do much at all. And so the story is, well, look, he's going around his life and he's actually going to school. Can you believe it? He's got an associate's degree already. He went to a community college. He's actually doing something. So that is the story from some people's perspectives. But as Dash said, Professor Dash, that's not really the story. The story is like, okay, well, what are they doing that's neat or unique? Or, like, for example, I did a story a couple semesters ago for Multimedia, shout out to Stretch, on this guy named Anwar. Well, Anwar has Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, and what that means is his muscles are slowly weakening as his life goes on, and that is every single muscle in his body. So he does not walk, he does not move his arms too much, but he can whistle. He can whistle really loudly, especially when he's drunk, I will add. But
Man, just putting him on blast out on the air like that.
Exactly.
Wow, savage, Ryan.
Let the man whistle, and PG ain't got to take a cheap shot at him. We could have just left it at the good whistle.
He's 21, so you cannot miss him. So the story was that he's using the whistling to keep his lungs strong. So of course the lungs are muscle, and so the whistling uses a lot of air and a lot of strength from the lungs, and so I kind of use the whistling as the story. And I think just from wheelchair basketball, well, the story is not that these people are in chairs and they're playing basketball and pursuing a dream. Well, of course, like any athlete is pursuing a dream. But it's like, what are these athletes doing on the side? What great app have they created, or what
Career aspirations do they have someday?
Yeah, something like that. So that's something I've had to learn too. I know in some of my classes, when I first started here, like, I want to do a story on somebody with a disability, and the professor would be like, well, what's the story? Well, the story is they have this. No, that's not the story. Because we all have something. We're all pursuing something.
Very true.
So, yeah, I think it's definitely a great thing to learn from Dash, and it's always good to talk with him. And I think he mentioned being talked down to, and he mentioned an example of his daughter who has CP being talked down to. And that is something that happens to a lot of people.
What experiences have you had personally? I know he talked about how because she's in a power chair sometimes when she's ordering or something, the waiter won't even address her directly. Do you have similar experiences?
Terrific question, but I don't have any experiences. I cannot relate well. I'm sorry. No.
Ryan just lives in a bubble.
Everything's perfect.
Yes. I live in my house. Nobody ever sees me except when I come here. No, I mean, even today, I mean, I haven't had anything happen today, but even in recent years, I will go out to a restaurant with my family, and the waiter or waitress will go around the table and get orders from my dad, my mom, my brother, and then they'll just skip me. and I'm like, oh, I want this. And I'm like, oh, okay. And sometimes they'll also be like, I'll look at my dad or my mom and be like, so what does he want? And I'll just say my order. And it's like, I think part of it is just the education that they've been through. And like, maybe they don't really know anybody who's in a chair or has an impairment, so the perspective is a little different from mine. So I think that is one thing that Dash mentioned, was that the perspective is different for everybody. Yeah, and then I've also had somebody come up to me in a restaurant. I was with my grandparents and parents and brother, and this lady got right up to my face, and she's like, "Are you special?" Like, I was thinking, well, I mean, I think I'm special. I'm pretty special to myself. I like myself. But my answer to her was, no. I mean, how am I special? And she's like, well, everybody's special in some way. Well, it said a reference to my chair. I mean,
Like, yeah,
you didn't say that to anybody else.
I wonder how many people. Yeah, she said that too. That were
Yeah,
walking
really.
around.
I mean, yeah, I don't take that stuff too hard. I mean, obviously, I'm joking about it here. I mean, I just can't be offended by it because I've had so many things happen, and it's just, all right, well, I'll laugh about that one once you leave. So that's just kind of how it goes with that. How do you think for you guys the perspective has changed since getting to the university here, or even to the radio show?
Putting us on the spot.
I do what I can.
I would say coming to university, my perspective on people with impairments has changed a lot, in the sense that I no longer feel the need to go out of my way to like help them.
Yeah.
I kind of now, or even especially when I'm with you, just wait till you tell me, if you need help doing something. Before it was like, oh, let me do this for you, and it wasn't out of like, what was that, what was they, feeling bad for them. It was just trying to be a good person, but at the same time, I've learned, every now and then someone snapped at me, that they can do, and they have done up until this point, a lot of things on their own. They still can. So that changed my perspective a lot, and really made me understand that it's not about doing things, but more so doing things in a different way. So I'm like, oh, okay, like I do things this way, but you do things a certain way. I walk, use the wrist. So
Yeah.
there's a trade-off.
That wrist, all in the rest.
Well, I'd say that when I initially came to university, I definitely saw a lot more people in wheelchairs, and that I remember initially it was a bit surprising because like I wasn't familiar with seeing that many people. But at the same time, like at this university, I feel like there are so many people from all walks of life, so it's been a valuable experience to have those interactions. And I'd say that for me, most of my growth has come just from the interactions I've had with you, Ryan, in terms of the sit-down conversations we've had on a weekly basis, and kind of just getting to know you on a personal level and have these discussions, just kind of building awareness through your experiences, because obviously I can't speak for you. I've never been in your position, but at the same time, I feel like
my chair if you want.
all right, I'll have to kick you out after the show and zip around the studio.
That's pleasant.
But I just like to say that you're a great friend, and I cherish that relationship we have. So thank you so much for what you've taught me so far. And I'm really looking forward to what we have awaiting the rest of this year.
Yeah, we have nothing. Shoot. Sorry, guys.
Don't quote us on that.
No, we have a great show. We have a great show the rest of the day and down the road for sure. But I really do appreciate your kind words, Will. James, you're okay.
I'm okay. But in all seriousness, one other thing that I did notice, or I've noticed more, is accessibility to things.
Yeah.
When we go in buildings and we go different places, where is the entrance for people that, can't go up, 20 steps or something like
Right.
that? And where are they? Where is it located? Is it located in a nice spot? For example, when we go to Greg Hall, we're going out with you. You gotta go back by the dumpster. I'm like, why is that? That's not nice. It's not fun.
Isn't that ironic?
Exactly. So that has definitely raised my eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
And it shows that even though we're considered one of the best universities in the country for impairments, at the same time there's still like progress to be made, and to further that. So.
Sure, yeah.
Just to add to what he said, I definitely see that as well in terms of when I'm walking around campus, like kind of looking for if everywhere is accessible. Sometimes I think like, oh, like, is there an elevator in my like apartment complex, or kind of just stuff like along those lines. I know. Even when you see the curbs on this university, I'm sure you appreciate them, the way that they're cut.
I do.
And I hope eventually we'll start to talk about Nugent and some of those early things
Yeah.
the university did, the initiatives to make it more accessible for everyone.
Yeah, Tim Nugent, definitely a big name around here. So big that my dorm is named after him. He started up wheelchair basketball here, and he started up a bunch of different initiatives that are still in place today.
Yeah.
But as far as accessibility goes, that's obviously one thing I consider. Can I get in this building? No. All right, well, I just won't go to class. Nice. No.
Ryan just always looking for excuses to get out of
Exactly.
class.
Snow,
That's what I've noticed the past 2 weeks on
rain.
this show.
Are the curbs too high? Yep, can't go that one.
All right, whoops, looks like I can't go to class.
I couldn't get out of bed. Ah. Actually, I could. No, I mean, obviously, I do consider accessibility. I consider sidewalks. Now, there are some sidewalks around campus that are really rough. They're very uneven, and I feel every bump. As my chair allegedly has suspensions, I don't feel any suspensions at all. I mean, I just feel every bump. And sometimes I have to slow down for bumps just because of my back. My back is shaped like a dollar sign. I've made of money, as I say. Yeah, the sidewalks and the doors. Yeah, we could have an accessible door, an accessible button, but does it work? So when you press the button, does the door open? No. Oh, that's good. Just like the armory. There are 3, 4 accessible entrances. Sometimes not every button works. You have to go to a different door. And the door may not work because it's turned off. So sometimes they turn the doors off during the weekends when nobody wants to go inside the armory.
Well, the Armory isn't a great place to go just in general, I guess, unless you're doing track or
Right,
you're
right.
ROTC, but that's beside the point here.
Yeah, and it's relevant for any building. They do turn off the doors occasionally just to give them a rest. Like they turn off the stop signs. So that's something I have to work around. And the elevators. Like when I get in a building, get in the elevator, oh man, those buttons are really high. How do you expect me to reach that? I mean, the button's like 5 feet high. I am 3'8", okay? You are like way above me. So luckily I can raise my chair up and use my little reacher thing on the side here to...
Show that for all our viewers at
Yeah, UPTV,
UPTV.
here you go. You got a good
The
reach.
claw.
The claw.
Yeah, it's basically a claw that
I'm pretty sure Ryan uses it for chips late at night, more than anything.
For,
Chips and snacks.
Oh, potato chips?
Yep.
Oh, I thought
Reaching
you-
for the bag.
So how does that help you then, Ryan, in terms of when do you use that?
Yeah, so basically for WPGU listeners, it's kind of a long stick with a little hand on the end, so I can press a little lever and the little hand grips. So essentially when I drop something, I can pick that up and put it in my other hand, or I can pick my nose if I need to.
It looks a little painful. I don't know if I
I
want to pick
think
my
it's
nose
big,
with
so I'll
that.
pick your nose.
You want to clamp your nose?
Been a rough day. No, so if the buttons are really high, I just reach this little arm up and I press the button. But the reality is, yeah, I can do it. Great for me, but not everybody can. There are some people on this campus who do not move their arms because they physically cannot. So when I'm around campus advocating for accessibility, I don't advocate for myself. I don't care if I can go to class. I mean, I don't want to go anyways. But I advocate for the other person. It's like I've been stuck in a room in Greg Hall before. That's a long conversation, and I met with a lot of people for that one. I was stuck in the room. I long story short, got out. But the reality is, if there was a fire, I may not be sitting right here. Instead, I'd be watching you guys.
No, I like when you watch it like, eye to eye.
Eye to
in the
eye,
same
okay.
room.
I prefer having you in studio.
Yeah.
In studio,
Yeah,
okay.
physically.
Physically, okay. Emotionally, nah, just physically. No, so when I'm advocating for accessibility, and in that case, I was saying, okay, yeah, if you had a button on this door, I could do it, but One, where's the button going to go? If the button will go up against a bookshelf that is completely useless, I don't think anybody could reach it because it's jammed up against a wall. So that's one thing. And then the elevator buttons, I mean, there is some nice little remotes. They offer people with disabilities, so you can go in an elevator and you can press a floor and it will take you to that floor, which is really nice. I don't use that because I would prefer to get the exercise and touching the button, but other people have to use it. So when you are going around campus, that's something to look for. And shout out to the union. Those buttons are really high. Just saying. I mean, they're like, probably, James, they're probably up to your chest. I can't reach those. One, because the elevator is very tight. I can't turn around. So one time, Kane and I were in that elevator together, and our backs were both facing the opposite direction of the buttons.
Oh.
And the door closed, and Kane is like, wait, how do we press the buttons? Ah, jeez, the buttons. I guess that's important. Luckily, he could stand out of his chair and press the buttons, but that's not the case for everybody.
For any new listeners out there, Kane was our producer last year, and is someone you'll probably see make a few appearances over the course of the year. He's playing for the basketball team right now.
Yeah, Kane's the man, plays wheelchair basketball.
He will not let you forget that. He talks about working out all the time.
Yeah.
He's a very passionate player.
You know,
Looks like once again we're wrapping up the show while talking about Kane.
Yeah. Yes, Kane remains here in spirits.
Forever in our hearts.
He left an imprint on our hearts. You know, I work out with Kane every Fridays. I saw him today. He was moaning and groaning and in pain from his exercise. It's not something I would like to do ever. But yeah, I mean, I have a different perspective because, one, I'm a lot shorter than you guys. I see a lot of legs when I'm going around campus. You guys probably see heads, just because I'm not as tall as you. And so, like, when I'm going around campus, I look down at the sidewalk. Like, okay, I probably don't want to go there because there's a really steep drop-off. I don't want to go in the grass. Okay, I'll just hit this person, and then we'll be good to go.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I see you around campus, actually. I'm always waving my arms frantically. Ryan, I'm over here. Rhino.
I have had people say, Ryan, you didn't wave at me today. I'm like, oh, you're out there? I didn't see you. And they're like, you look really focused. I'm like, duh. I'm focused on where I'm going. I'm not focused on looking at your face. Like, oh, that person looks great. And then I go off on the ditch. I'm like, no.
So if he does see you, you're special.
And I'm not waving.
And if you do see Ryan out there, make sure to say hi to him.
Yes. Yeah, UPTV listeners. You're very fortunate because you can see us. You can see James. James is right at center. And I'm off on the edge. On WPGU, you just have to follow us on Twitter at Rollin Illini and on Facebook, RollinIllini.com, of course. We do fun stuff on Facebook and Twitter. We have 2 minutes left here, guys. And, of course, just like last week, we did a little shout-out to the Paralympic movement and some big news with the new president coming in, Andrew Parsons. This time around, LA 2028 is official. So that is great news if you are favoring LA 2028. Not everybody is, actually, but I love it.
I think I'd like to go to LA in
Yeah,
11 years.
I'll be there. You know, as a surprise to my parents, I already signed up to volunteer. Surprise. You
just now dropping this on them?
Yep. Surprise, I'll be there.
All right, well, Ryan's going to get his tan on and get some experience out there in the Paralympics.
You sign up for a newsletter, and I was like, yeah, I'll get news. This will be relevant to our show. It's like, all right, congratulations, you're a volunteer. Huh? All right, I'll be 33 by then. Hopefully I am employed.
Whew, you'll be a little ripe then. Real world Ryan right there.
Hopefully I have a full beard by then.
No mustache anymore,
No
right? Or are you going to keep the mustache?
I'm going to keep it as long as I can. That's not going anywhere. I spent 22 years on this and never shaved in my life.
Me
Wow.
either. I get a little fuzzies when I go to the barbershop. They're like, "You want to keep your beard?" I'm like, "What beard? Are you joking? Get rid of this."
I'm jealous.
Yeah, people have asked if I need to shave for TV. I'm like, oh, James hasn't, so nope. I'm
There
not.
you go. I set the standard.
Yes, I lead on James for all of my questions. Yes, so a good show today. We have LA 2028, Leon Dash, and some Tatiana McFadden talk. And we're going to end it right there. For Rollin Illini, WPGU 1071. For Andrew, with UPTV, Will Gerard, James Boyd, I'm Ryan Wilson, and have a good weekend.